It was difficult, or should I say deadly, to make mistakes in the 17th century. In Spain, for example, spreading news that it's the Earth that revolves around the sun and not the other way around could put you in prison. During the Spanish Inquisition, a variety of methods for torturing prisoners were developed. Some were so terrifying that you'd die in an instant. Every era saw these methods of torturing people recreated in different ways, and that's what we'll learn about in this video. The many methods of torture used throughout history. You'll learn about the Iron Maiden, bamboo torture, and how people were tortured during the Inquisition. The best thing is that you'll also learn techniques for surviving such torture. So what are we waiting for? Let's get started. The first torture that we're going to take a look at is the so-called Iron Maiden, a classic of the medieval Inquisition. So how does the Iron Maiden torture people? Well, there will be a sarcophagus or iron coffin with sharp spikes on the inside. Then, a human would be confined inside the coffin in a standing position, where he or she will slowly lose blood from the wounds and eventually die. People who were suspected of heresy and told to create a confession but resisted were tortured in this way back then. They would torment the accused with the Iron Maiden in the hopes of getting them to confess. But what happens once the person enters the sarcophagus? It's not really hard at first, because spikes just cause minor skin damage and won't kill you right away. The problem is that the person must remain in that position for the next few hours without moving. The person's legs will begin to weaken in a few hours, and his nose will begin to itch. After 20 hours without food or water in the Iron Maiden, the person will begin to lose consciousness due to fatigue and blood loss. However, the victim will experience searing pain from dozens of spikes as soon as he passes out. The agony will wake him up, but only for a short while. It will become a routine of passing out and then waking up from the pain he is experiencing. If you were the one locked in the coffin, you would be thinking now that it's best just to confess. But don't worry, there is a way to survive inside the Iron Maiden. As you can see, spikes will damage you if you lose consciousness, because you will lose your posture as well. This means that you have to stay awake for as long as possible. And here's a bit of trivia. Most sarcophaguses don't have spikes on the sides, so make an effort to carefully lean your hands to the side. This will help in reducing the fatigue in your legs, but keep in mind that you must move as slowly as possible in order to avoid the spikes cutting your flesh. It's worth noting that the less blood you lose, the longer you'll be awake. Take a few rapid breaths in and out when you start to feel sleepy from weariness. Your heart rate will rise and you will become more alert. To minimize stress and distract yourself from your tired legs, it's also a good idea to maybe sing a song. Historians now assume that the Iron Maiden was employed for intimidation rather than torture. This method of forcing someone to confess isn't yet the best. If this is utilized, a confession might be delayed for several days. The intensity of pain, especially in the Iron Maiden, cannot be changed, and as a result, as long as the pain is bearable, the person may refuse to confess. Keep in mind, though, that torture didn't originate in the Middle Ages. Rather, it was inspired by ancient China. Before Inquisition, there was the so-called tickle torture in China around 200 BC. It was so efficient that it was used for more than 2,000 years. There are lots of ways this torture was done, but the most popular one involves tying a person to a table and soaking their heels in a salt solution. Then a goat would arrive and begin licking the salt from the person's heels. Yes, it's a little funny to watch and imagine while the goat tickles you for the first few minutes. But what if the goat tickled you on your foot for 3 hours, continuously? Well, there are around 200 nerve cells in the body. Because of persistent discomfort from the tickle, you will likely experience non-stop laughing and acute pain even for just a touch to your heel. A prolonged tickling torture session could result in respiratory muscle spasm, leading you to die from laughing. However, in tickle torture, there is a technique to survive. The most important thing is to ignore what's going on in your foot. Yes, it will be difficult, but it is the only way to save yourself. Try to redirect your focus to anything else while the goat is licking the salt off your heels. Take slow and deep breaths in and out. Try to exhale when the tickling becomes unbearable and excruciating. The shiri torture, the next form of torture we'll discuss, was a favorite among nomads. Prisoners were made into submissive slaves as a result of the effectiveness of this torture. So how was the shiri torture carried out? Your hair had to be removed first, leaving your head perfectly smooth. Then a fresh piece of camel skin will be peeled and placed as a hat on your head. Your hands will then be tied to a strong wood that will prevent you from removing the camel skin on your head. Then you'll remain in that position with that camel skin on your head for around 5 days in the middle of the desert. You might ask me, what's the big deal? If you didn't know, camel skin begins to shrink and stiffen on the head when exposed to sun. Your hair will soon grow again after a while, but it will not be able to pass through the shiri and would instead grow in. How will you get through this awful experience? Remember that midday temperatures in the desert can reach 47 degrees Celsius, or about 117 degrees Fahrenheit. So before that happens, you'll have to seek shelter. Then you need to remove that hat after hiding from the sun. However, since your hands are tied, your only option is to, well, be flexible. Try to remove the camel skin using your knees. You must act fast before the camel skin begins to dry out and shrink. However, even if you survive the shiri torture, the nomads will probably still enslave you. Torture did not always result in the survival of the person. There is no way to avoid dying in certain circumstances. Now it's time to tell you about history's most heinous torture. What could it be, and how does it vary from the previous ones? Before we answer that, I just want to remind you that if you've made it this far into the video, you're clearly enjoying it. Give it a like, subscribe so you don't miss anything, and let us know what you think in the comments section. Bamboo torture was a particularly lethal kind of torture performed in ancient China. Ropes would be used to hang a person parallel to the ground, and a knife would be used to sharpen bamboo shoots. For a few days, the person will be hanged on top of the bamboo. It's worth noting that bamboo grows at a rate of 1 meter every day, which means it'll eventually surpass the level of the person. Its stems are strong enough that they can pass right through a person's body, killing him instantly. Is it, however, truly possible to withstand bamboo torture? Let's use the American illusionist David Blaine as an example to answer this. Even after stabbing his own shoulder, Blaine could survive. The needle travels through the arm without hitting the muscle or blood vascular veins. However, what Blaine is doing is not something that should be attempted at home, because only professionals like him can perform these. However, even with Blaine's abilities, the bamboo torture would have been too much for him. Bamboo torture can only be surpassed by Indian yogis. They can move and rotate their bodies at appropriate spots and angles, allowing the bamboo to pass through them without causing harm to their important internal organs. But wait, if you think that bamboo torture is the most painful torture, there's more. Remember the Iron Maiden that we've talked about earlier? What if they utilized the copper bull instead? Since the copper bull is small, you'll have to lie down and hunch over. Yes, it will really not be comfortable inside, but discomfort is the last thing you need to worry about. They'll start building a fire beneath the copper bull belly as soon as you enter. The only way to get out is to kick down the door and run. However, it won't be so easy performing that in a tight, overheated bull's belly. To push it down with your hand will require years of practice. Researchers have not discovered any documented incidents of death via growing bamboo onto a victim or copper bull torture. These were probably only urban legends used to scare people back then. However, the next torture I'll share with you, the elephant execution, has been thoroughly documented. As the name suggests, elephants were used in executions. They were taught to crush and take off a person's limbs and legs before killing them. Executions were staged as grand exhibitions in India. Is there anything you can do to avoid the 4-ton animal's massive legs from piercing you? Well, all you can do is roll on the ground while keeping your arms and legs to your sides. However, it's still possible that the elephant will accidentally step on you. But let's say that you have your own trained elephant. Then you can just tell it to crush the executioner. What would tortures look like now if they were still practiced? To me, the best torture is tying someone and forcing them to sit down in front of a giant screen. On the screen, for example, past videos in which I made a mistake and indicated incorrect information. The person wanted to correct me but was unable to do so since his hands are tied. Believe me, this is probably torture for him. Apart from my video, we could also have the person watch a speech by a politician, a celebrity, or anyone he despises. Or we can also display a video of their favorite sports team's downfall. There are numerous reasons for him to leave a rude comment, but he is unable to do so since the ties are too tight. We can even use some classics. A goat walks inside licking the person's heels every now and again. So how about you? What do you think about modern torture? Let us know in the comments. If you enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Please click the bell icon so you'll be notified when new videos are posted. And as always, thanks for watching Ponder This.